Welcome to That 30 Show, a podcast where we talk about the good, the bad, and the surprising parts of our 30s. I'm G, and I'm finally 30. I'm excited to find out if 30 really is the new 20, because if it is, then the best years are yet to come.
And I'm David. I'm entering my mid-30s. I used to have no back pain or trouble sleeping, but now I live off a healthy diet of self-help books and dream of being in bed by 10 p.m. every night. Join us each week as we try to figure out together what life in your 30s is all about.
Welcome back to That 30 Show. How's it going, David?
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're not on vacation again.
Yeah, and I'm feeling good.
You're feeling good?
I slept early last night. I woke up early this morning. I got my errands done, got workout in. You know, some Saturdays you like go out and you dance until 3 a.m. and you come back home and you sleep at 4. And some Saturdays you just go to bed early and wake up early and get things done. It's called balance.
In full transparency, I know like we talk about like living your best life morning routines, but I'm very human. And this is one of those mornings. I literally just rolled out of bed. I've been awake. I was on my phone. I was just catching up on like the playoff game last night. I was just watching YouTube. So no cold shower for me this morning. Haven't eaten breakfast. So
that's okay.
So
we
what
all
are we
have
doing today?
Weekends. Today we are having another podcast episode with a guest, which is really fun. I know you always say this, but you like the episodes where we have like guests on because we, get to hear a new perspective and it's not just us talking all the time.
You make it sound like I don't like it when I'm just talking to you. That's not true at all. Like I'm a super curious person, as maybe it has hopefully come across in the podcast in a good way. I love meeting new people. I'm so curious. So I'm really excited to meet your friend today. Tell me more.
Yeah, so we have my friend Udhay on today. So first of all, hi Udhay. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It was very hard for me not to interject while you guys were doing your beginning preamble there. It was like,
you want to interject?
I just felt I'm like a part of my favorite podcast now, and I just wanted to like let my presence be known.
So
we don't bribe our guests to say that, in case anyone's wondering.
This is full honesty right here. Yeah. So what kind of morning did you have today, Udhay?
Oh, it's a good question. I woke up earlier than usual, probably pre-podcast jitters. I was so excited to get on. So earlier than usual on a weekend for me was 7 a.m. My eyes opened. And then I just didn't feel like going back to sleep. So I basically just sat in my bed on my laptop until this moment. You see me in my bed. I took a shower and I brushed my teeth to get nice for you guys. But I'm back in my bed now for this conversation.
Nice. Well, we're happy that you made it onto the pod and we're happy that you're excited to come on. I feel like thankful that you enjoy the podcast so much. I was saying most weeks, I think you know when the episode is up, or you let us know when the episode is up before we even know it's up. I don't know how you do that. You might get some kind of notification, but really happy that you like the pod and really appreciate that you always give us feedback on the podcast.
It's my pleasure. I love what you guys are doing. I love what the podcast stands for, and I love listening every week.
Yay. So the topic we're talking about today is relationships. Ooh. But we're going to be talking about relationships with parents, relationships with friends and partners. And I feel like it's great that we have Udhay on today because, first of all, he's the first male guest on our show.
Wow.
David's been carrying the masculine energy through 13 episodes for us.
Barely,
so
we're breaking the glass ceiling today of male representation.
And I think having a guy perspective on the topic of relationships, I feel like generally it's more discussed between women. I mean, I don't know if you guys talk about that during your bro hangouts, but we always chat about that, during girls' nights and things like that. So I think it's going to be refreshing to hear some of those perspectives from you guys. But a few fun facts about Udhay before we get started. Udhay is also joining the 30s Club this year.
Hey.
Right? Yeah.
When?
Yep. In September.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Yeah. So another one to the dark side. He's also a big movie buff. How many movies would you say you watch in a week?
So the last 2 years, I've watched about 260 a year.
Holy.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that comes out to like between 5 or 6 a week.
Where do you have the time?
Literally just like you kind of pre-plan. It's nice. You pick out like 2-hour, 90-minute movies, and then on the weekends you could do more damage. But like over the weekdays, I'll either go watch a movie or I work a 9 to 5, and then you get like 5 hours between coming back home and going to sleep. So
that is
I try to squeeze a movie in there. Yeah,
I don't know anyone, no matter how much they love movies, watch that many movies.
Yeah, when he's not watching a movie at home, he's watching a movie in theaters, I think. So, yeah. And you like watching a lot of like older movies, right? Or you have a variety of genres.
Older, foreign, like there's an endless library of movies that have ever been made. So I like to go through the treasure trove every now and then and see what I can find. Yeah.
Udhay also loves puzzles. I feel like every time we go over to hang out, he always has some kind of puzzle on his desk. So do you do that while you're watching a movie?
No. I wouldn't. No. I wouldn't defile a movie like that with a puzzle. Yeah. I'll have like a TV show or a podcast on in the background while doing a puzzle. A movie requires a bit more attention. Yeah.
Jigsaw puzzle?
Jigsaw puzzles, but also like, building little like wooden models and stuff like that. Sometimes they're like little brain teaser puzzles. Anything that kind of like, uses your hands and uses your brain. I love it.
I'm loving the nerd vibes, yo. I'm digging it.
Udhay, like as a friend, he's such a great friend. I feel like he always makes his friends feel like validated and relatable. He listens to his friends really well, but he's also very honest as well. And so I think in that sense, like you and David are quite similar.
Love it.
And he also parties hard and has a great time, but he doesn't drink. So that's like, I think that's an interesting fact, right?
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I don't have very many. I guess you two don't really drink.
even I, because it sounds like he is completely completely absent.
Yeah, I'm a alcohol virgin.
Yeah, like I'm not. I've certainly had my fair share of alcohol, especially in high school years. So
yeah. So no alcohol for Udhay, but he can always have a great time. But his vice is Diet Coke. So
yes, that's my alcohol.
Pick our poison, right?
Although I'm happy to announce I am about 5 weeks sober from Diet Coke. Yeah, I stopped drinking way back in April. And actually, so I was drinking like tea and I would have like ice caps on the weekend. But since the beginning of May, I've only been drinking water.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And I had mad caffeine withdrawal the first couple of days, but I'm good now. I'm a free man, not held down by any substances or chemicals or anything, just living off water.
That's awesome.
Really hard.
I know.
One of the weird things about me is I also only drink water, only in the past few years. But I was never a coffee person. I was never like an alcohol person. So it's relatively easier for me to become a water-only person.
Right.
But for you, if you're drinking Diet Coke, if you're drinking coffee, and you're like, oh, I'm going to become a water person now, that's really hard.
So did you just quit cold turkey? And is that your plan? Like, are you just planning to not have Diet Coke ever again? Or
yeah, it was cold turkey. The caffeine withdrawal I had was so severe that it kind of scared me straight of like, oh my God, I do not want to go back to a place where that is going to happen to me if I ever stop. So I feel like right now I have good momentum with water. I don't want to jinx it by saying I'll never go back to DC or whatever. DC. We'll see. DC, yeah, sorry. You have a shorthand when you drink enough. But yeah, I don't know if I'll never go back, but I'm happy living my water truths for now.
That's so cool. I'm sure, because your caffeine withdrawal, because you used to have a number of Diet Cokes a day. So
about five cans a day. As many movies as I would watch in a week, I would have Diet Cokes in a day.
Yeah, so this is a big deal. This is like,
so that if anyone's keeping track at home, that's 5 movies and 25 Diet Cokes a week.
I cannot.
Well, good for you for keeping on the water train. But today we're going to be talking about relationships and thinking about relationships with parents. I know, we have Mother's Day and Father's Day coming up. I know not everyone, celebrates or is able to celebrate those holidays, but just being on the topic of parents, do you want to tell us a little bit about your family, and are you close with your family? Is your family big? Is your family small?
Yeah, so I'm Indian. that's relevant here because usually we're known to have big, giant families and stuff. But my family is relatively small for an Indian family. I would say like the main players in my family are me, my mother and father, my brother. I have one grandma that's actually I have two grandmas. Sorry, second grandma. I forgot about you there for a second. I have one grandma who's really like more present in my life. And then I have an aunt and three cousins. And that's about it. So it's like literally it's like 9 to 10 people who are really like the family. But it's close knit and they're a huge presence in my life and always have been. Yeah.
You're turning 30 this year is like big life change, I guess. Do you ever look at where you are right now and where your parents were kind of at this age and compare yourself? Because I feel like I do that all the time. My parents they immigrated to Canada when they were 28 or 29 and moved to a whole new country and started this new life. And I'm always just like, okay, should I be like further along? Because my parents were, did some big changes when they were my age.
Yeah, absolutely. I make that comparison. And, they say it's the thief of joy. And I guess it is. Like you said, our parents have immigrant stories. And those are incredible stories of overcoming so much and like exploring new frontiers. And yeah, so when I compare myself approaching 30 to where my parents were, it's an impossible task of like trying to match up to that or, even comprehend what they had to do, the risks they had to take. I guess it would be helpful if I kind of like told their story a bit. It's like any immigrant story. They came over to Canada, they got married young, arranged marriage. They began working at convenience stores. It's like they had a Max convenience store and it was just the two of them at first. They would work basically how it would go. My mom would work the morning shift for 12 hours and my dad would work the graveyard shift for 12 hours. So they've told me many times about like the first 6 months of their marriage, they only got to see each other when they were like switching off shifts. And they had my brother and they were still running the store and he was kind of raised in the Max convenience stores. And so was I. My earliest memories are like getting bathed in the sink in the back of the store. And, they slowly worked and toiled over the years and then they got the opportunity to manage a store. And then they got the opportunity to manage 2 stores and, whatever, fast forward 30 years, they now own and operate about 11 Petro-Canadas across the lower mainland. So
wow.
They're kind of this immigrant story of like climbing that ladder and like climbing it exponentially. And so when I compare what I'm meant to do with my life to that, I don't know that I'll ever cover the distance that they ever do. But, the hope is to take what they've given me and make the most of it. I don't know that comparison is a very healthy thing to do. And I don't know if it's fair to myself or to them. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, I compare myself all the time. And I try not to. And I try not to think of it as comparison. I try to see it more as like a blessing of like the legacy that came before me and like what I could do to carry that on.
That's such a beautiful classic immigrant story. Very humbling to hear. My mad respect to your parents. I'm curious if you think that their very overt work ethic and growing up, well, from what it sounds like, scraping every dollar kind of thing. Do you think being exposed to that sort of lifestyle, seeing that in your parents, did that rub off on you in ways that you think stays with you to this day?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the work ethic part certainly does. And, this idea of not taking anything for granted. It's funny the way like my kind of parents progressed on their journeys. Like growing up, I lived in like a basement suite. And basically through every stage of life, our houses and our cars got a bit nicer to a place where now I'm like a very privileged person. And thanks to the work my parents have done. And so I was lucky that for those formative years, like those first 5 years of your life, it was a more like humbling blue collar existence. And so I do think a work ethic was developed there. I do think in many ways I'm more probably jaded and selfish and spoiled than my parents were. And I think I try my best to fight those proclivities as much as I can whenever I see them popping up in me. But certainly I won't rob myself of the fact that I do believe I have a good work ethic. That's shown through like school and just treating any job you have with respect and with like a modicum of dignity and respect and trying to do your best at it. Certainly like that's a part of that legacy that my parents created that I want to continue. Yeah.
I think the topic of comparison is also challenging. I do it myself. Like I compare myself to my parents at this age, but it's hard because we're in such a different time. I mean, I don't know about your parents, but my parents immigrated to Canada because they, wanted a better life for me and then eventually my brother too. They wanted to leave where they were, which is not a very stable job and it wasn't great conditions. And they wanted to, move somewhere where there's like more hope, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But then when they raised us, now I'm in such a privileged position, I feel like. And so I don't really have as many of those desires. So it's more about being grateful for what they've given me and then taking that and hopefully leaving that legacy for the future, right?
Totally. And sometimes like the way I think of it is like our parents, they were limited to like one door and they had to put their head down and plow through that door. And like, it was kind of a straight line trajectory for them. And it was a tough road and it was an uphill battle, but they've done it and they're established now. And for their children, instead of that singular door, they've been able to create an opportunity where there's thousands of doors in front of us. And then suddenly we're struck with that idea of like a tyranny of choice. Of there are so many doors here. Oh my God, I'm paralyzed. Like, what's the right door? So it is a unique challenge. It's probably like a better challenge because it comes from a place of privilege. But sometimes like, yeah, our challenge is more like, oh my God, this incredible mountain has been climbed. What do I do at the summit now? Where's my mountain? Where's my challenge? How do I do something? How do I make something of myself now? Which is a nice problem to have, but yeah.
I would never wish hardship unnecessarily on anyone. Certainly you, Udhay, or G, or anyone like that. But just hearing about your story and just reflecting on this upbringing that a lot of immigrants have, I do think there's a lot of value in it, in the sense that I think that you learn so many valuable life lessons through going through adversity that equip you and arm you with the tools to deal with life for the rest of your life. I think a lot of people who struggle, it's because they've been sheltered their whole life. And then finally, when life finally hits them, they're completely unequipped to deal with failure, to deal with setback, to deal with scarcity in any way, to deal with challenge. And that's why, and again, I don't know if I'm sort of romanticizing hardship here. And I really, hopefully I'm not doing that in any disingenuous way. But one of the things that I'm most grateful for is that my family did hit hard times when in my adolescence. And the reason I'm grateful is because I think that I was living in such a bubble that unless that happened, I would have been completely ill-equipped and ignorant to life. And it's not like, oh, well, you can't be sheltered my entire life. I'm going to face it sooner or later. And so I think, having your child go work when they're in high school, do part-time jobs, that's something that I never had to do or needed to do, or my mom allowed me to do because she's like, you're a kid, you're a student, your job is to, looking back, it's like there would have been so much value for me to toil a little bit.
Yeah.
I see a lot of quote unquote successful people all come from very challenging childhoods.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing on the whole to have to climb a mountain.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Udhay, do your parents ever put some like expectations or pressures on you because of like their journey and their going back to, okay, well, we had to go through some tough times, but now, grinded it out and we're at a good place now. Do they ever put those kinds of pressures on you or your siblings?
It's not an overt pressure, but it's a pressure. I have an older brother, and it's like a pressure we both kind of instinctively feel. And it's not necessarily something that they're saying or doing. It's more just knowing where they came from, having seen growing up how hard they worked. It's this responsibility that both of us feel to make something out of ourselves, almost to like make it have been worth it. My parents, they struggled and they did all this for me and my brother. So the pressure that exists is just to like make that sacrifice have been worth it through our lives. It's interesting. That's always something me and my brother wore as like a burden. And it was something that we felt burdened by. And it wasn't too long ago that we kind of like, I don't know if I want to call it an epiphany, but we had this like meaningful conversation. And the kind of conclusion from it was that our parents didn't work this hard for us to then be like mentally tortured by how hard they worked for us. We can't live in the guilt of like, oh my God, they did so much for us. It's kind of a selfish feeling to have that guilt. And it's like, you kind of got to get over that and be like, okay, yes, mom and dad created this wonderful platform for me to bounce off of. Get over yourself and just use it now to do something, because that's going to be the most effective and productive way to go about this if you really mean what you say about wanting to make that sacrifice have been worth it. But yes, there is still a pressure, and that always exists. And, you know, it manifests itself in the normal way. I'm Indian, so your parents want you to be, it goes doctor, engineer, and then lawyer. That's kind of the ranking system. And, you know, neither my brother or I are doctor, engineers, or lawyers, but
yeah,
that pressure was always felt, and you still feel it. But you try to not let it hold you down or make you miserable, because that's not the point. That's not why they sacrifice themselves.
Yeah, so it's more like a self-pressure that you put on yourself rather than kind of nagging you to go become a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. They might secretly have that hope.
Totally. And you know this, but that pressure, it manifested itself in my own journey. I started with a bachelor's degree in engineering, and I did that. And I realized it wasn't for me, and then I pivoted into the business world.
It's such an interesting balance. You have to respect the hard work your parents gave you by making sure that you maximize your potential in life, because that's what they want for you. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they're not happy if you're torturing yourself. Exactly. Like, why did I work so hard to give you a good life if you're not even going to live a good life?
Totally.
Yeah. Do you have any expectations of your parents, or have those kind of changed? In my early 20s, I feel like I had more expectations on my parents, maybe not rightfully so, but just expecting them to be the provider. And then I didn't feel as grateful, I guess, when I was younger, which is probably normal. And as I got older, I'm like, oh shit, parents sacrificed so much and did so much for us that now I feel like I have to, slowly not pay them back, but, now that I'm in their position, basically, to take care of them.
Totally. I think the expectation, if any, it's like most of my life, they've been protectors and providers. And I think like now, as I approach my 30s, the expectation for me is for them to like let go of being my parent. I mean, they'll always be my parents, but let go of feeling the need to like take care of me and allow me to like flourish and become my own and like find my independence. I always feel my brother has moved out, and we'll probably get into this. I still live with my parents. A part of me wants to move out. A part of me is very happy living at home. But I always do feel like this tinge of, when I leave, I will officially be making them empty nesters. And so that guilt also stays with me. But I guess my expectation for them is to like push me out of the nest as well.
Yeah, but you've moved out, like, and this I just know about you, but you've moved out during school, right? And so what was it like, moving out, then moving back home, that kind of relationship with your parents? And how do you think it's going to change, once you move out again?
Moving out was wonderful. I had a great time, but I was also at grad school, and that was just like a really fun, exciting time for me. I had like a built-in system of friends. I was in a new city. So I loved it. I craved that independence. And then I moved back amidst COVID, and I moved back just because my school was done. It's kind of morbid, but when I think about moving out, what scares me about the idea is I feel like I'm going to move out and I'm going to see my parents less and less, and the months will turn into years, and then they're just going to die and disappear on me. And like, so I feel, yes, I know, but I feel like when I move out, I will be somehow fast tracking the rest of my life without them, because that is like, once I move out, the rest of my life is in homes without my parents. And so I do feel like I'm fast tracking or fast forwarding to like being alone or without them. This is probably something I should talk to a therapist about, but that is a lingering thought when I think about moving out and what that'll be like.
Honestly, like I kind of had the same thought when I moved out too. And I remember I think it might have been a week before I moved out. I was just talking to my mom and she was just getting really emotional. And I was like, I'm going to be downtown. Like I'm going to be like 20 minutes away from you. It's not going to be super far. But she was just like, I know once you move out, you're not going to move back in. That's the end of an era of us living together in the same household and us, seeing each other all the time, that dynamic is going to be different and it's never going to be like that again. So it's such like a pivotal moment in your life.
But hearing you say that now, I guess it's like, there's also the exciting aspect of it, of like, how does our relationship develop and change from here? Because I feel like once that happens, now we can almost like sit together as peers. I think there's probably an exciting part of that, of how does the relationship change and develop, which I'm just realizing now as you say that.
Well, I feel like my relationship with my mom, at least, is more intentional now that I've moved out. Like when I spend time with her, it is spending time because we don't have every single day together. So when we spend time together, it's like, okay, well, I'm actually making an effort to do it. And we talk and we actually spend that meaningful time together.
Right. And that sounds more productive than probably it was when you were living together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's kind of fun and interesting too. It's just the physical space aspect. When you move out, you have your own space. And then you've lived your whole life in the space and care of your parents. And the environment is where like, oh, I am the child in this home. Once you move out, you have your own space where if you have the chance, when you host your parents, it's like a reversal almost. Like, okay, welcome to my space. Let me cook for you. Let me, here are your slippers. Here's water. I don't know. Like that physical space forces a very intentional shift and role reversal in who's taking care of whom.
For sure.
Even if you're 50 years old, 40 years old, if you're returning, quote unquote, home to your family's house, to your childhood home, I think that physical space always just puts you, no matter how old you are, as the child.
I think my parents were also more traditional. My mom was like, why would you move? Like, you're not married. Why would you move out? And then she wanted me to like live in her basement. She's like, well, we could be close. You can live downstairs and then you could just come upstairs whenever you want. I was like, well, it wasn't really my point of moving out, but...
That sounds exactly like my parents, literally to the T, to the basement thing. And I was like, Mom, there's a thing about a guy who lives in his parents' basement that you guys aren't on the internet. But like, I'm not going to subject myself to that. But yeah, that's kind of exactly how it is. I don't agree with that. And so that'll be a bridge we have to cross when we cross it. For now, though, I'm kind of happy living at home.
I would love to live at home if I
could. It's nice.
Meals every day. Oh my God.
Exactly. And I'm saving money. And I'm also at a point where like, I know that my parents don't necessarily want me to move out. And at this point, if I were to move out, I would kind of need their financial assistance to do so. So when I rationalize it, something about it feels very dirty of me going like, hey, I know you don't want me to move out, but I'm moving out. Also, I'm going to need some money from you guys to help me do this.
Yeah.
Something about that just feels so dirty and underhanded that I'm like, okay, I'm saving money. I need to get to a place where I can do this on my own for me to actually do it. And of course, that's not going to be like, I'm going to leave in the middle of the night and be like, I have enough money, bye. But like, I'll obviously get their blessing and stuff and do that. But that's definitely... as I approach my 30s, and I guess it's kind of late, but it's a conversation I see myself getting closer and closer towards.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely such a privilege to be able to, live at home, right? To have your parents to provide you a space where you can stay. Like, first of all, having your parents live in the same city as you do, and then you can stay in their home while, you're building up your career and everything.
I think we have to also, if we're going to talk about traditions and living at home, etc., this conversation, we have to acknowledge the sort of the elephant in the room, which is culture. Pre mentioned this, G, you mentioned this, I think Udhay, you're sort of alluding to it too. When you said you moved back home, your parents are happy. It makes a lot of sense if you're familiar with Asian culture.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm generalizing. Every time you talk about culture, you're generalizing. But generally speaking, Western culture, Canadian American culture, they see themselves as doing their job if their child moves out at 18 or 21.
Yeah.
They're not going to be unhappy, but they're going to, this is like, okay, you can come back. Sure, you're our son, but how can we get you out of here as soon as possible?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a huge cultural element to this, and there's no right or wrong. And I think because of that culture, sometimes it's hard for someone to see, for example, your situation, you then be like, oh, why would that possibly be a positive situation?
Totally.
I think it's because of a cultural difference in values here.
Yeah.
Even the notion of the guy living in their parents' basement, I feel like it's such a Western thing. Because I think if you ask, like if I ask my mom about that, she'd be like, what's the issue?
What's wrong
here?
with that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny. Sometimes I crave that, and I think of like, oh, what would it be like if I was pushed out of the house at whatever, 18 or 21? Sometimes I feel like living in my home, I'm in a state of arrested development. It's such a new frontier and such a challenge to go out there and live on your own that I'm sometimes wondering if I'm keeping myself from discovering who I am when that happens, or growing in all the ways that I'll grow when that happens. And so it's always a trade-off of, yeah, this is nice and it's wonderful to be loved and supported, but also like how much of my growth am I hindering by staying in this home where I am considered a child? At what point do I need to break from that, become a man?
Become a man. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's trade-offs to living at home and moving out as well. Do you ever find yourself comparing like your situation, living at home with that of your friends? Because, some of your friends have moved out and some of your friends still might live in their parents' homes. Like, do you ever think about that at all?
Yeah, I've certainly taken note of the fact that I think I'm one of the only people in my friend group who lives at home with their parents. And so, yeah, your friends are kind of like markers of, they say you're the sum average of all your friends. And so, like, they're kind of markers for where you should be at in your life. And so that's one thing I certainly notice. And does it create a pressure? Yeah, kind of. But also, honestly, I'm pretty even-keeled dude, and I'm happy right now. So, yeah, I also don't feel pressure at all. The comparison stuff, it's kind of like impossible not to do it. But I'm very much of the mindset that it's not a productive way of looking at life or doing anything. So I always fight that notion and I fight that feeling. So I try not to ever let it dictate how I actually move about.
Yeah. David and I have talked about this in the past. When you're in your early 20s, like everyone seems to be moving in a similar way. University, like we're all kind of still living with our parents, university, getting jobs and stuff. And then we're starting to see that shift.
Yeah.
In your late 20s and then going into your 30s, everyone's kind of at a different spot, but that's normal, right? You're not going to be the same with all your friends. And, in some ways you're ahead and in some ways you're quote unquote behind, but it's just you're just moving at a different pace. That's all, right?
Totally. We live our lives in this funnel of kindergarten, grade school, high school, university, and then that funnel just opens itself completely up once you get out of there. That's also the reason friendships and those relationships change when you get to that point.
Yeah.
How's that for a segue?
Speaking of friends, I know I was trying to move towards the
I know, I did it for you.
The friends topic now. But speaking of friends or friendships, I guess, I feel like both you and I have pretty unique friendships in the sense that our close friends are ones who we grew up with. How do you think we've been able to maintain all those friendships for all those years? And have they evolved over time, or have you ever had fallen out with friends? But I feel like most of your friends are from your elementary school days, right?
Mine are from high school, at least. Yeah, I've left the elementary school people in the dust. But no, most of my really close friendships are from, I'd say the oldest one goes back to maybe 2015. So that feels relatively fresh. But, how do I maintain those? At this point, it feels like we've become inextricable parts of each other's lives that it's so hard to imagine ourselves not catching up every now and then. And usually what keeps a friendship going is you share a space or you do something together. You have a hobby that keeps you together. You go to school together. You have a job together. But with those deeper relationships, at this point, it's we've kind of gotten to intimately know each other that we don't need some kind of unifying location or occupation or anything to keep us together. We're just that we're connected, we love each other, and we want to stay in each other's lives, and we make an effort to do so. And I think the more of those kinds of relationships you have, like the more room they take up in your life and the less room there is for like, others sometimes. And so like I'm kind of at a space where I feel like I have enough friendships, and so I'm a friendly person, but I'm not necessarily looking to fall in love with new people in
Damn it.
a platonic way.
Yeah,
No, David, I
was
love
gonna
you
say,
already.
David.
David, you've already,
David, you
you've
missed your
already.
shot.
No. He's already been streamed into my consciousness through this podcast, so you already have a place in my heart. Don't worry. But that's not to say my heart is cold and turned away from it. I just mean like,
Yeah, you don't need it. You don't-
yeah, I feel loved. I feel satisfied. My cup is full.
Yeah.
Hey. Wait, I gotta ask. This is so interesting because, to your point, G, for both of you, it seems like your friendships have been pretty stable. Even 2015, sure, that's probably recent, but still pretty steady. And because you mentioned earlier, in your 20s, everyone's walking along the same path. But as you approach your 30s and certainly into your 30s, people start living more different lives. And as their lives evolve more and more, perhaps interests change, lifestyles change, maybe even values change. I'm curious how, just to get your perspective, because maybe for me, but certainly for friends, good friends that I know, I've heard and seen how friendships have been impacted by evolving priorities, interests, and lifestyles. For example, you have some, let's say we're talking about getting the male perspective. In high school, in university, you're gaming a lot. You're spending a lot of time playing video games. I'm generalizing here. And that's how you hang out. But maybe as you get older, as you push your 30s, you're more intentional with your time. Maybe you're hustling, you're building your career. And I know a friend who is less interested in just gaming now. They want to have more meaningful conversations about self-development, personal improvement. What are we doing? Let's talk about families. Let's be more vulnerable. Let's not just like meet up and game.
Yeah.
For both of you, you haven't seen that friction between evolution of people and how that impacts your friendships.
I have. And that's to address what G's point of, have you ever had a falling out? Yeah, I have. There were people I considered like my best friend at some point that I've fallen out with. And it is, David, you hit the nail on the head with how you've described it. That my situation was something similar of, we had a friend group, grew up all these years doing the same thing. And I was a part of the contingent that wanted to keep things going as they were and keep on gaming and then, getting late night ramen and bubble tea and watching movies and doing frivolous things, I suppose. And there was a friend who was like, we need to build experiences. We need to do this. We need to do that. And so there was a falling out there because it was just kind of like, well, we're kind of happy doing what we've always done. We don't suddenly want to change up what's been working here. And I think what was going on was, not to throw all the blame on this person, but he had things going on in his life that he needed to work with, and he felt in a place where he was stuck. And that frustration was manifesting itself by looking at the routines in his life, the things that were steady in his life that maybe he considered were holding him back from having these new discoveries or finding new facets of himself. So we became the kind of lightning rod of his like immobility in life. And I think we reach a point in our life where sometimes we're unhappy. We have a quarter life crisis, a midlife crisis, and we need to change things. So for some people, that means flipping the table over and having a hard reset. And that's kind of what it feels like happened for me in that instance with that friend, of like them just needing to change shit up in their life because they were unhappy with where it was. And so, yeah, I've lost a friendship through that. And I think that is a symptom of getting to this age where the world is open in front of you and you're trying to figure out how to navigate it the best way you can. And some friendships can't survive the crashing waves of that.
But then for your other friendships then, Udhay, did you guys all want to do kind of similar things or were on the similar path? Or how do you think those friendships stayed?
I think that kind of starts with like having a healthy relationship with yourself and being at peace with where you're at. I guess that's not a relationship we think of as like the relationship with oneself, but like it's kind of important. And so I think once that kind of stayed together, we all had a good grasp on who we were, where we were, what we wanted. And we knew that the moments we spent together were just about like enjoying ourselves, having fun, unwinding, letting go of our earthly burdens and just being in each other's presence and enjoying one another's company. And that fed us and energized us in a way that was effective and meaningful. And so that energy never changed. And that's what's kept us going. It kind of starts with like having your own shit together yourself and knowing what the friendship is for and what it does for you and being happy with what that is.
So something that I was really excited for to have you on Udhay as the first guy guest and talking about friendships is male friendships and how that sort of works or doesn't work. I had this conversation with a guy friend very recently about how guys connect. Most guys just meet up and there's like an activity that you do, right?
Yeah.
Girls' night, you meet up, you're talking.
Yeah, I was saying this earlier, like girls' nights, like we'll have a glass of wine and we'll talk about all the things that we kind of talked about here today. But I was curious, like, what goes on in like guys' nights? Like, do you guys talk about this kind of stuff? Do you guys get vulnerable, get deep? Or are you guys just like playing video games and talk about basketball?
Yeah, I feel like a bad spokesperson for guys because like I tend to gravitate towards guys who do get vulnerable and we do have those intimate conversations with each other. And so the guy friends that I'm close to, we definitely have that relationship where we can talk about those things. And it's interesting because like I mentioned, my closest friendships are with females and like that's what it's all about for us. I do have a lack of like male friendships in comparison that go that deep. The ones that do are along the same lines. And I would say like one of the closest like male friendships I have is with my brother. And that is a very open and raw kind of relationship where all of that is being discussed and it's being enhanced by the history of us having known each other for our entire lives. I do find it, as a dude, I find it much easier to become friends with women than to become friends with men. And it's because like I naturally gravitate towards those more digging deep, kind of more intimate questions and getting into the vulnerability. And that's kind of how I connect with people. And that feels like a more feminine way of connecting with people.
And you're probably really open and honest about it too, which makes people want to talk about that as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to generalize between what's feminine and what's masculine. I'm, my form of masculinity maybe is a model form of masculinity. I don't know. But certainly, like, I find myself gravitating more towards women in friendships. And I realized that especially like when I was in grad school and I was a part of girl groups and I had to question myself of like, what's going on here? Why is this happening?
You're in the girls' nights.
It's just how I connect with people. And it seems to be like females connect more so with getting to know you and like asking those deeper questions rather than just having this kind of not surface level relationship, but a surface level kind of like bond of we both like football. And to be quite honest, one of my most important relationships is with my youngest cousin who's a year older than me. And our relationship is purely like we get together, we either play video games or watch movies. And there's rarely a discussion of like what's been going on or how are you feeling about this and stuff like that. Even when we're doing something like silly or mundane or something that doesn't seem that intimate, there's like a deep love and affection always present. And it's kind of that idea of love languages of just spending quality time together. And like sometimes it's just sitting down, passing him like a PlayStation controller. That's kind of how we say I love you to each other. And so it doesn't need to go deeper than that. It's not like that relationship is void of any depth or intimacy. It's one of the most meaningful of my life, but it's just not spoken in quite the same way. And with my like female friendships, it is much more spoken. But even with my male friendships I have, I don't know if this is odd or not, but we end conversations by telling each other we love each other. And I think
nice.
I think that's a good thing.
I love that.
I think it's important. Damn. Yeah. And so, but that's rare. Like I have male friendships like that, but it is rare. But yeah, those are the ones I hold on to. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I think that's a really good point about your cousin and how that's really meaningful too. Because I don't want to sit here and like shit on male friendships that are toxically masculine, right?
Totally.
I think that there is so much value in that kind of friendship where you're playing sports, playing video games, playing board games, watching movies. But I think that it's like, do you also then get that intimacy and that vulnerability in other areas of your life? Because I think you need that, but you shouldn't necessarily force that on male friendships that aren't comfortable with that. I think that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you guys bond through video games, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you also as a person are evolving and growing through more vulnerable friendships elsewhere.
What about you, David?
Well, I mean, I just, like, you know me, G. I feel so seen. Like, where's Udhay been all my life? You guys never introdued me. I am also that guy who is, like, hanging out with an entire group of girls. And I'm, like, trying to be kind of awkward, right? Because I don't want to...
When I saw you chuckling, I was like, David probably relates to this so
Oh
hard.
my god, I relate so hard, and it's really hard for me to make male friends because
Sure.
I am so uninterested, generally speaking, in that tough sports, no emotions. 'Cause I'm not interested in that. Like G knows, I talk about this with her in our mutual friend group. I don't like to go to clubs. I don't like to go to bars because I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, miserable.
I want to have a conversation.
Totally.
And I can't get to know you. I want to talk to you, but the music's too loud. I hate restaurants where the music's so loud I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
So I relate 100% to everything you're saying. I'm all about that. But I have some guy friends where we don't really talk about that as much, and we just play sports and stuff. And I do wish I had that more traditional male group. I had that when I was younger, back in university.
Yeah.
But I don't have that anymore. And I think I miss that, and I need that, and I want that. I want that friend group where it's not like deep and meaningful all the time. And we're just literally having a beer, playing some games, and we don't have to talk about anything past the surface. I miss that. I think I need that. I think guys need that. Just the same way how girls need their girl group. I think guys do need their guy group. It's just that if that's the only thing you have, I will say that you probably do want to explore your vulnerability elsewhere as well. That's
absolutely. And I was lucky enough to go to an all-guys school in high school. So I was forced to have those relationships with guys. And I'm honestly really lucky I did, because I've held on to a lot of those male friendships. And those are like the male friendships that are really present in my life. Post high school, I've just been getting to know females mostly.
Do you think later in life, we try harder to maintain friendships that exist in our lives? And then in our earlier 20s, we kind of like let go easier. And now we're like, okay, we want to make the time and effort to hang on to those friendships.
I actually feel like I'm the opposite. I think in my 20s, I was still wanting that validation and approval from everyone and anyone. I needed that. But as I grew more confident in myself, it's fine and balanced. You don't want to be a complete asshole and not like hear feedback from friends, but like, hey, David, you're doing this. It's not cool. You want to hear that, but finding a greater balance between that and knowing who I am. And if there are friendships that bite the dust, I was fine with that. I didn't feel the need to hang on to that. So it's actually the opposite for me.
I was just thinking in terms of like, you don't try as hard to make new friends sometimes as you get older, and you want to like really maintain those friendships. And so you try harder and communicate harder to try and keep those friendships together. What do you think, Udhay?
I could vouch for that. So during the pandemic, when we were all kind of like forced to be by ourselves, something that really emerged for me was I love watching 5 movies a week. But also, I kind of was able to learn that year-long period of like really being stuck inside and isolated. I kind of learned I'm very content being alone. I'm definitely an introvert at heart. I get so much energy from just being on my own. I love hanging out with my friends, and when I do, I like do it to the fullest, and I have a great time with it. And I always take an opportunity to hang out with my friends. But my alone time is so precious, and I really learned the value of it during that time. And so what happened as a consequence of COVID, I was able to kind of like realize what friendships were really meaningful and what friendships I really needed to focus on. And so I felt my circle get a bit smaller, but in a way that, in like a Marie Kondo way of I was like only keeping things that brought me joy and keeping friendships that brought me joy. And that was really spurred by COVID. I guess it's also a natural evolution of like getting older and like not having as much time to keep in touch with the 500 friends you have on Facebook, and like really just focusing on like the 10, 12 people that you want to keep in constant rotation and have like a proper meaningful relationship with. So in a good way, I felt I did spring cleaning of friends. Is that what Audrey Tong said on a podcast once? Yeah. So I felt her when she said that. Yeah.
I feel like so many people have brought that up, the spring cleaning of friends, and now Audrey is responsible for all the spring cleaning of friends that we've done. Okay, so you mentioned like throughout the pandemic, you discovered that you're happy being alone. I feel the same way. Like I share that sentiment too. I enjoy being alone. I don't know if I'm an introvert or an extrovert,
Wait, what?
to be honest.
Gee, you're extrovert. What are you talking about?
I do enjoy my alone time though. Like,
No, everyone does. Everyone does. But...
yeah. Well, I don't know if everyone
Some
is.
people are miserable on their own.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm probably more on the extroverted side, but during the pandemic when there was a shift to actually being alone, I think I really like thrived like that as well. But speaking of alone and partner, we can dive into the relationships of partners.
Yeah, like, because you're so comfortable being alone. So tell us more about how that may or may not play a role in your romantic life and your situation there and how you feel about that.
Yeah, certainly. So what that means is there's like an incredibly high barrier to entry when it comes to finding a partner or wanting a partner even. And also something that is another barrier to entry for that is I still live with my parents. It's very hard to date and get to know people in any productive way when you're still living under your parents' house, or at least I find it to be. But also, I'm very content with where I'm at, and my alone time is precious. And so I'm approaching my 30s and I'm single, but like, I'm not eager to find a relationship. And do I imagine myself down the line wanting and craving that? Sure, yeah. But I don't feel like there's anything missing from my life. And I think a part of that is also I have two of my best friends in the world are women. So I get that feminine energy and that feminine intimacy that like maybe one would crave in a relationship. I have very close relationships like that with my friends. And so that part's not really missing. I'm not really craving much else. So like I feel very well fed in that regard in terms of like having a support system, being heard, having someone to turn to when I've had a bad day. That's all there for me. So for me to want a relationship, it would need to be like, a literal angel comes across me who not that I need an angel because I'm an angel or whatever, but I just mean like the barrier to entry is so high for me to be like, yes, you will now become a staple in my life. And honestly, like, I feel like to some degree, that's a good spot to be at to then find a perfect relationship because I'm limiting myself, but then I'm limiting myself to something that's going to be meaningful.
I'm all over this. And I absolutely endorse. I love it. I support it because I think you and G are very similar in this way. You're very fulfilled 100%. Individuals. And it's not like you're opposed to a relationship, but the barrier is hard because you don't feel a emptiness or a lack. Something's lacking. I think the majority of people, or certainly at least a sizable number, go into a relationship or seek relationship because it feels something that they feel is lacking in their life. Right. And to be honest, as you know, the cliches all out there, that's not the healthiest or the ideal way to enter a relationship. You should enter a relationship where that relationship brings additional value to an already whole life. And you both have that whole life. And I think that's pretty rare, to be honest, but absolutely commendable, very healthy, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. So like, I'm giving you a standing ovation for your self-confidence and being just at where you are, because there are societal pressures. Yeah. Right. I don't know if you want to talk about that from your friends or from your parents. I hate societal pressure. So anyone who's like bucking that, I'm like, you do you. I'm so happy for you.
Go away, society. You're totally right, David. Like, I always describe it to my friends. I mean, they can't see the visual here, but I always describe it as like a lot of people are maybe like here at a certain level. And then they, with a partner, they'll be like here above, right? Yeah. But I feel like my level is already at this above level that I would need even more from a part, like to add value to my life. So I feel like I'm already at that higher level just being by myself. But on the other hand, there are downsides to that too, like being too comfortable and being too content. And then you just kind of lack the motivation to go out and, find a partner or find that kind of relationship. And then you're content, you're comfortable living life, but, time's still ticking.
Yeah. And I tend to have this internal monologue of mine. I'm always trying to like catch myself being full of shit in my own head. So sometimes when I go like, yeah, I'm happy, I'm content, there's also like this voice in the back of my mind going like, yeah, but are you just saying that? I talk this big game of like, I'm content, my life is great. But a part of me is also like, yeah, but are you just scared of taking on another person and going to the next level and like finding that happiness? I don't think I'm full of shit, but I don't ever want to rule out the possibility that I might be.
I love that humility. It's very important, and I think it's a very healthy perspective. I don't know, G, if you want to like add to that, because related to that point, you're like, well, if I have a partner, how will that essentially cramp my lifestyle? You have such a full life. What if the partner actually drags you down and they're needy and stuff? Like you're very scared of having like a needy partner.
Totally. I feel that.
So
Well, that's the part about being content and comfortable. It's like I have my routines. I am free to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And so like having a partner, you have to like compromise sometimes. You have to do what they want to do. And yeah, so, you know, a part of me is like, wow, I love my life. I love doing all the things that I like to do. The other part is there is also societal pressure that you think about too. And there's different pressures for like single men and women in their 30s, right? Biological clock being one of them. So it's like double-edged sword. I don't know.
I think the thing is we just haven't fallen in love with that person that's going to make us want to make all those compromises yet.
Yeah.
Because sometimes like I'll talk to my friends and they'll be like, yeah, I had to wake up at 6 a.m. today. Like my girlfriend wanted to go to like a tulip garden and like in my head I'm like, oh my God, thank fuck that I don't have to go to a tulip garden at 6 a.m. this morning. But the idea being that, like, if I were in love with someone, she would make me want to go up and get it. And that's beautiful, too. That I'm in love with someone so much that they're going to make me do this thing I don't even really want to do. There's beauty in that. So I think maybe we just haven't been so smitten as to want to change our routine.
I mean, this question's for both of you then, but like, there are many different reasons why someone may not be in a relationship. As you said, you're very content, or maybe someone is very busy just hustling and they want to focus on their career first. There's many different reasons. Since you're so content with where your life is at, and it's hard for you to envision what a partner could look like that would make you want to wake up at 6 a.m. I want to try and see if I can put you on the spot and ask, if you really think about it, can you share a little bit? What does that ideal relationship look like? What do you think an ideal partner adds to your life? Does it answer nothing because your life is already 100% full? What is a life with a partner look like for you that is ideal, that is something that you don't have right now? I don't know if you can even think of an answer because I'm so curious.
Yeah, I guess it is hard to imagine because it hasn't been there, but it would be someone who like inspires me almost to want more out of life. I am such a creature of habit, and I'm such a I find a nice warm spot and I'm happy to stay in there for as long as I can. And so I guess that ideal partner would be someone who inspires me to want more and crave more and be more daring and like be more adventurous in that sense. But also just, I think what we really crave at the end of the day is just like someone who's there, who knows us, they don't judge us, and they're a support system. They'll hold you when you're sad. They'll raise you up when you're happy.
Yeah, I agree with what Udhay said, but I'm going to also go a little bit more practical on this. Like, you know, just having that support system, for example, like when you're sick or it's like that partnership where, you know, whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, you're going to have like someone to like back you up and to help you through, you know, hard times. Also, you like can't have a children by yourself. Well, you can, but you know, yeah. So some of those practical things I feel like would add a lot of value to my life.
I think in a city like Vancouver, by far the most practical benefit of having a partner, if you do live together, sharing the rent/mortgage payments.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, you can tell that I have both been there and not been there, and it's a huge difference.
I think we can wrap it up here. We talked a lot about relationships today and a variety of different relationships. So that was awesome. And I'd like to thank Udhay for coming on today and sharing, being so honest and open and vulnerable. I think that led to such a great discussion for us and telling us a bit more about, you know, your background. I learned a lot of things.
Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the podcast. I love what you guys are doing. I really enjoyed this conversation we had. Thank you so much for creating a safe space to let it happen. And I love you, David, and I love you, G.
Oh my God.
Love you too, Udhay. So, you know, like as our kind of like final question, you're turning 30 this year. What are you most excited for entering your 30s?
Oh, wow. See, this is supposed to be a simple final question, but now it's like opening my brain into like all these. I don't necessarily like birthdays. I don't like the demarcation of like, you're turning 30, congratulations. I feel like I haven't done anything. I've just been sitting here for this amount of time and now I'm 30. Well, what am I excited about? I don't know. I like life. I'm excited to see how it develops and changes over time. I feel like, we have like friends around us who are hitting some big milestones and stuff, and their life is, turning in different and important ways. And so that's exciting to see like the growth of your friends and see how other people's lives are changing. But for me, I'm excited to continue in my existence, which has been pretty swell so far.
I love that. Continuing on. Well, that's awesome. Where can people find you on your socials? Would you like a plug a social in there?
Yeah, they can follow me on I think my Instagram handle is at Udhay Sokhi, I think. UDHAYSOKHI.
We'll link it in the show notes.
And if you want to follow my movie journey, I'm on Letterboxd, which is like a social media for movie watchers. Letterboxd, it's spelled Letterboxd, BOXD, and I'm Udhay on that. You could follow and track what movies I'm watching and stuff like that.
Cool. I will definitely.
That's so cool. That's like the Goodreads for.
Yeah, basically, and I've been I write reviews and stuff on that. I like rate.
Udhay writes great reviews, so
I try. Yeah.
We should start a movie podcast.
Yeah, David, I'm here for it.
All right, well, I'm out of that one. On that note, I think we'll wrap it up there.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. I really hope you all enjoyed today's conversation. If you did, we'd appreciate if you could take a moment to share our podcast with your friends. Follow us on whichever podcast platform you're using. Give us a rating on Spotify or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We would also love to learn about you, our amazing audience, and shine a light on your unique journeys. Do you have a story about what helped you thrive in your 30s? Or challenges you've overcome? Let us know at that30showpod@gmail.com or DM our Instagram, that30showpod. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you have a wonderful week ahead.